The story starts in the past in a vast field with little sheep when suddenly the sky begins to crack. The poor shepherd girl already has her eyes wide open in shock. Then a giant eye appears, staring right at her. It was on that day that the Demon King's invasion began and countless creatures appeared. Guess who shows up alongside the Demon King? Ah, wait, not the Awakened like I thought, but this time it's the Divine Knights who serve God. The thing is, it's very devoted. They make a vow to God, and through that oath, they gain supernatural powers and push the monsters out of the land. However, the demonic miasma, which is a substance from the demon realm, stayed behind in high concentration in several areas. Most of the places where it existed were corrupted and died out. In an abandoned city, you can actually see a massive plant feeding on a fallen body there. Gross. Wait, no, it's a woman hanging upside down. And the story says that whoever survived really ended up turning into a demon, but then someone slices through it and the plant drops to the ground like trash. The vice commander of the Divine Knights, Karen, says they arrived too late. Oh, saying name is Cheyenne-Vert's weapon. That's right. Someone calls the vice commander and says the red moon has appeared. Damn, the last time I saw a red moon in the story, it didn't end well. Suddenly, they hear pounding noises, and a guy says there's construction up ahead, warning them to be careful. When that moon is in the sky, anything can happen. Karen steps closer to the site, and inside he spots a human. A little kid, big-headed, with eyes spread farther apart than anything else. Looks like that's our protagonist, since we skip ahead 15 years from the day he was found. In an orphanage cafeteria, someone says it's thanks to the Divine Knights that they can eat at all. They should be grateful. But then someone calls out the guy up front. It's Leka, asking why his portion is so small. The man doesn't look happy hearing that, and he just turns, saying it's nothing. From the background, he observes everyone in the cafeteria while remembering how his own village was attacked by demons when he was younger. He was the only survivor and was brought here to be raised by the knights. Everybody thinks it's strange that a baby all alone managed to survive. On top of that, they say the birthmark on his face is proof that he's a child of monsters. In other words, they don't see him as one of them. At that moment, someone throws a pile of old fish and scraps of food into his bowl, saying what there isn't enough for a creature like him. Everyone in that place suspected he wasn't really human, and since all of them had lost their families to demons too, obviously he wasn't loved. The guy who threw the food calls over a crying child nearby. Leica knows this boy just arrived yesterday. The bigger man crouches down and says the child's father was eaten by a monster disguised as a human, the exact same kind of race as Leica. He wants him to apologize. Leica's confused, not understanding what's going on, but the kid is already shouting at him to give his mother back, calling him a pathetic monster. And with that, the man slams his head to the ground, saying if they told him to apologize, he'd better do it. So poor kid, he apologizes. What else could he do? White-haired protagonist. I thought he was about to flare up an aura, but looks like he's still got a lot of growing to do. Wiping the dirt off the floor, he says his routine has been the same for over a decade. Basically, you can't leave this place until you're an adult. On top of that, when you turn 15, you can be sent by the priest to become a divine knight. You have to pass the tests, and for Leica, there are just 5 days left until his turn. He can't stand being stuck in that cursed orphanage any longer and can't wait to get out. It'd be so much better if you can really become a divine knight. The scene shifts to a statue, and someone says the ceremony is about to start. Anyone who had turned 15 and wished to become a knight just had to step forward and make the vow. The shaved head guy next to Leica sneers, saying, "A monster like him will never become a divine knight." Then the priest asks them, one by one, to step forward again and make their vow before the chalice. For those whose liquid turns blue, they cannot become knights. But those whose liquid turns gold are the ones who can drink it, then receive the vow and power. For the oath to work, they had to offer what was most important to them to that god. Besides that, this ceremony can only be done once in a lifetime, so they'd better be careful with what they choose to offer. The shaved head guy goes first, and he swears he'll never run away from any monster again. His younger sister had been eaten by a creature that stood right in front of him. Now he vows that no matter how dangerous they are, he'll kill every last one. The chalice begins to shine, lighting up the whole room, and suddenly the liquid turns golden. The man says a true noble has appeared, and now he can never run from the creatures again. He takes the cup, the priest blesses him, and the room glows. Right then, he feels a strange power flowing through his body. Everyone around is stunned. The second one steps up, declaring he swears he'll live as a wanderer with no family once he leaves this place, because for him, family was the most important thing of all. Seems like it worked too. Another goes, makes the vow, and it works. A girl steps up, makes hers, and it works too. Leica was sure he'd succeed as well. But of course, when it works for everyone else, it has to fail for you. Main character problems. He's called forward, and he steps up nervously. He says he swears he'll become a knight to protect people, but then he freezes, not knowing what else to say because he can't think of anything he could actually offer. He wants to leave this place and be happy, but he has absolutely nothing to give. The guy completely forgot you're supposed to think before stepping forward. Genius. He's yelling inside his own head, trying to convince himself that there must be something important within him he can offer. Suddenly, a strange energy begins to surge through his body, leaving him confused. At that moment, the liquid in the chalice turns into a weird purple slime. The priest immediately says he's never seen such a terrifying color before. He declares the ceremony over right then and orders everyone to leave. Leica tries to say something, asking them to wait, but out of nowhere, slice. His arm goes flying. Good lord. The people in the back start saying that just as they always suspected, he really was a monster after all. What the hell? Some of them already awakened, drawing lances and sprouting massive arms. Damn, I want to awaken too. They announce they'll kill him now, saying that this cursed thing pretending to be human won't leave alive today. But at that moment, the priest orders them to stop, saying that power cannot be used against humans. The very next second, the ceiling begins to crack and a fist smashes down from above, vaporizing the man. When they look up, there's a demon with some kind of mark on its forehead, glaring at everyone. People scream in panic, and clearly this wasn't part of the script, since even the priest looks terrified. The creature pulls the classic attack on Titan move, grabs someone by the leg and chomps them down. The priest yells for everyone to evacuate and call the Divine Knights, but then he's the one who gets caught. While the monster charges forward, Leica is sitting there missing half his body, staring in shock yet oddly calm. For someone who just lost an arm, he's taking it, okay, I guess. What scares him more is the demon standing right in front of him. The shaved head guy shouts for Leica to get out of the way so he can run, but strangely, he just keeps staring at the creature frozen. He remembers that during his vow, he promised he'd never run from monsters again. In that moment, the demon comes up from behind, and as he cries in despair, he's killed too. Another one is devoured while the kids around, fired up, start unleashing their auras, shouting that they'll have to defend this place. Man, they rush in like Dragon Ball Z characters. Meanwhile, Leica watches, fully convinced that at this rate he's going to be eaten too. But what could he do against a creature like that? He hadn't even received any powers. And right then, the monster, which now that I notice, looks like it's got thumbs for breasts, steps closer. It stares at him with that huge tongue and launches an attack, the mouth all tongue. Leica faces it, wondering if he's really about to die in such a pointless place. But then he remembers the chalice sitting behind him. In theory, if it changed color, it should give some kind of power. The attack's coming straight for him, and he decides whatever. Better to drink that disgusting stuff than die right there. The second he gulps down the liquid and hits his head like a seizure, and the tongue's already wrapping around his body. Damn, I thought he was about to unleash something insane, but nope, the kid got stomped flat. But it wasn't gonna end like that. An explosion erupts beneath the tongue, burning it away, and the kid wakes up like a Super Saiyan. What the hell? Completely different now, long black hair. Where's my Killua? He's staring at the monster, not even understanding what just happened, asking himself if this is really him. In that moment, his whole body feels strangely cold. A weird energy is flowing through his veins. The monster lunges again, but this time he dodges and finds himself face to face with it. He charges in, arm raised like Captain Levi, hurling himself straight at the tongue. He triggers an explosion spell, summoning a magic circle with purple lightning shooting out of it. What is this? The boy just evolved straight to Super Saiyan 16, flying there, aura flaring, glaring it down. He slams to the ground and reverts back, exhausted from the power he used. Behind him, someone mutters that this is impossible. They must be joking. But Leica notices something shocking. The arm that had been torn off and eaten has grown back. What on earth just happened? Suddenly, the word purification echoes through the hall, and a gigantic sword the size of a building comes crashing down, piercing the monster's chest. Someone steps onto the blade, saying they can't leave the body here or the miasma will spread through the city. The person apologizes for arriving late and asks if it was the boy who defeated the creature. Leica immediately recognizes this as one of the Divine Knights. Looks like they arrived blowing everything away because now the sky is clear and blue. They say the boy is truly impressive. Defeating something awakened like that wasn't ordinary at all. This is none other than the commander of the Divine Knights, Arthur. But man, Arthur's got a slim waist and wide hips, kind of unexpected. Leica, though, was completely fixated on that massive sword. He's never seen anything like it in his life. Then someone calls out to Commander Arthur, telling them to stop leaving everyone behind. Captain Wide Hips snaps back that everyone else is just too slow. The protagonist is still overwhelmed that the commander is standing right in front of him. He knew that if this person acknowledged him, he could finally leave the orphanage. But oh no, they've even got that little earring looking off to the side all cute. No way the artist really did that. Suddenly, Leica runs up to her, calling out to the Divine Knight and saying that becoming one of them has always been his dream. He's admired them forever and begs to join. But the diaper stainer right next to him interrupts, saying they should just kill this monster already. Arthur tells him to be careful about what he says regarding friends. Still, the guy insists this kid is the sole survivor of that village. He even saw him transform without making any vow and use a strange power. There's no way he's human. Leica tries to explain, but wham, a flick to the face sends the fool spinning. And she says outright that the boy just saved his life, and even so, he's spouting nonsense. Truly ungrateful. The guy's all red-faced, begging forgiveness, while the protagonist is left surprised. Now Arthur turns to Leica, wanting to know what's going on with him not having made a vow. Leica says that right when he was about to speak his words, the demon appeared, but he still gained power to fight. He drank from the sacred chalice after it had changed, so he has the power. But she answers that without a vow, it's impossible to gain such power. So then, what exactly was taken from him? Or why did the power awaken? Leica stumbles over his words until she says he's caught her interest. She wants to see this power he supposedly has. He doesn't really get it, but she just tells him to activate whatever it is because she wants to see it with her own eyes. The problem is he has no idea how to activate that power. It only happened on its own when he drank from the chalice. Arthur crosses her arms and says that's easy to fix. She grabs the boy and hurls him straight up, Teen Rocket blasting off past the stratosphere. From down below, she yells that now all he has to do is fire up that power, otherwise he's going to fall and die. While her companion calls her a demon, Leica's plummeting through the sky, thinking, what's with this woman, guys? He's passing through the clouds, realizing if that power doesn't activate, he's finished. Worse still, in the middle of the sky, what looks like a demon locks eyes with him, leaving him confused. From the ground, Arthur calmly mentions she forgot that this was sky-eating bird territory. Her companion yells that this is no time to be so relaxed, the kid's definitely going to get eaten. But before she can even answer, the beast chomps him down, and the two of them just stand there, realizing they messed up. Immediately, the man takes off into the air, saying he'll have to help her. And honestly, the story really is straight Dragon Ball Z. She admits it's unexpected, but maybe this is the perfect chance to draw the boy's power back out. The companion snaps that she really must be a demon. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Leica's trapped in the beast's belly, feeling himself being corroded. All around him are just the remains of victims. He knows if he stays there a few more hours, he's dead. But it's not even going to take that long. There's another creature coming from behind, ready to take a bite. He should be dead in seconds. But then he remembers that shaved head guy telling him to just die. It only makes him angrier, thinking he's stuck here because of that cursed kid at the orphanage who ran his mouth. Truly, those children and the divine knights were the worst. But there's no way he's accepting death in a place like this. Suddenly, he transforms again while the creature's insides attack him from all sides. Down below, the blue-haired one asks her why she's being so reckless. She replies that what she wants to know is whether the power to defeat an unclassified demon alone might actually benefit them. Suddenly, in the sky, the beast's stomach starts swelling and X bursts open on its chest, and the protagonist tears through it. He emerges from the top of his body, soaring through the air. As he's about to hit the ground, he stretches out his hand and unleashes a burst of air, softening his fall. The blue-haired man rushes in to help, asking if he's alright, noting that he looks strangely intact. But Arthur, in the background, says it's odd that he managed to kill that creature. He would have had to be on the level of a vice commander. Then she says that 15 years ago, a baby was found in an abandoned house. And it looks like he's grown quite a lot since then. Hasn't he, Karen? That's right. This is the man who saved the protagonist at the very start. Pretty wild, right? Saved him back then and met him again 15 years later. But Karen denies knowing anything about it. In fact, he says for that boy, maybe it would have been better if he had died back then. At that point, Arthur calls to the fool beside her and announces she'll be taking this child because they need to keep that strange power under their watch. On top of that, she says she'll give them some advice. In the situation humanity is in now, there's no such thing as caring about someone's identity. Humans need every bit of help they can get because time is running out. The scene shifts to carriages. Out of nowhere, it's got a Greek vibe and our protagonist is napping there. I imagine it must have been a pretty comfy lap. What the heck, kid? Resting his head on a thigh, he makes the worst decision, rolling off to the side, fleeing from a woman's touch. Alright, this woman did launch him into the sky. Honestly, yeah, it's probably better to run. He asks where he is, and then notices he's inside some kind of flying carriage. Arthur explains that they're short on time, so they had to leave before he woke up. It's a shame he couldn't say goodbye to anyone back there. He laughs a little, saying it's funny she even mentioned that, but then it hits him, and he asks if this means he's part of the Night Order now. She says yes, starting today he's under the care of the Knights. He doesn't really get it, wondering what under their care even means. She explains that his existence is an irregularity even for them. They don't know yet if he's someone who can be trusted, and that'll be determined by his actions going forward. He says he understands, but he wants to know what happened to the orphanage. Karen explains that the critical areas of the building were destroyed, so it was decided that it would be officially shut down. All the kids and staff will be split up and sent to other orphanages. Arthur adds that the saddest part is that most of those children were close to making their vows. She then asks if there's anyone like a missus. Remembering only the humiliation he went through, he says no, absolutely no one. But more importantly, he wants to know where they're going. She explains they're heading to the barracks in the holy capital city of Alha, a place filled with countless knights and other cadets like him. They've been preparing to defend that place because the great calamity from the mythical age could happen again at any moment. He doesn't understand what she means, so she just tells him to look out the window. Outside, the sky is starting to crack open. At the beginning of the story, it talked about that rupture in the heavens. From it poured countless monsters and beings from another world. Led by the Demon King, ruler of another realm, they sought to become gods of this one. The Demon King and his celestial demons managed to conquer and destroy parts of this land, tainting it with demonic essence. But in the end, the Order of Divine Warriors managed to drive him out. The demons were surrounded and sealed at the edges of the continent. That's the only reason humans even have habitable land left. The problem is that the population keeps shrinking and defending the land is getting harder every day. She's not sure why these ruptures have returned. The only thing they know is that something even greater than before is about to happen, and the only ones who can stand against it are the Knight's Order. Lake is still not quite following when she suddenly leans in, puts her hand on his face, and says she has a lot of hope riding on his power. The protagonist blushes bright red, and honestly, I could tell this woman was dangerous the moment I saw how the artist drew her proportions. He's sitting there like, "Hey, Arthur, what's going on?" She gets closer and says she saw a strange light in his eye when he transformed. That explosion he unleashed with the sword, and how his arm regenerated after being cut off. She's found a power that really interests her. She doesn't know what he offered in his vow, but she wants him to use it alongside them in this fight. And then she licks a bead of sweat running down his chin. My God, this woman is a freak. The protagonist agrees, saying, "Fine, he'll help. What else can you do?" Then she suddenly kicks him out, saying if that's the case, she's got work for him right now. I thought he hit the ground like an idiot, but instead the boy bounces off a tree trunk and lands on his feet just fine. At that moment, he realizes his body didn't take any damage. Strangely enough, it actually feels much stronger. From above, she yells that those who form the pact gain two kinds of powers, special abilities like her sword and physical capabilities that drastically surpass those of a normal human. And now he has to understand that the Knight's Order isn't just out here killing monsters. They also have to clean up the trash, and that's his very first job. Once he finishes, he can head into the city, but he better be careful not to go the wrong way. The protagonist is completely lost, wondering what the hell she meant by cleaning up trash, when he hears footsteps nearby and someone says that was a close call. One of them asks if the knights in the carriage already left. The scruffy guy up front wants to know who this kid is. They heard a loud noise and want to know if it was his doing. Leica has no clue who these people are or why they're hanging around in the middle of the forest. The man asks if he's an abandoned child or someone who lost his family to monsters. Another voice cuts in saying it doesn't matter. They'll just capture him and sell him. Cash is cash. Right away, Leica realizes these guys are bandits and maybe this cleaning job meant wiping them out. Looking to the side, he sees one of them carrying 3 little kids and the man tells him to come along before he gets hurt. Even if someone buys him later, he won't be able to guarantee anything. Leica sees those kids and remembers he went through the same thing once. And the fat one tells the children to shut up and get moving. But the protagonist steps in, telling him to let the kids go or he'll tear him apart. The boy's aura flares up, Killua style, and he declares that the first task his commander gave him as a member of the Knights is to get rid of them. The thug says he doesn't care who this kid is, he's on their turf, so screw him. They're gonna finish him right now, and everyone charges in. Light flashes all over the place, and in an instant, the boy vanishes. A second later, he's by the children, his aura radiating so fiercely, the thugs start trembling. The kids are confused, and the big guy fires an arrow. What a waste of all that muscle. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist turns into a blur. The thug wonders where he went, then looks to the side and sees him standing there, straight up looking like Killua. I mean, come on, that's a copy-paste. Another arrow flies, just as useless, and the boy responds even stronger. He unleashes a massive blaze, throwing up a wall of fire in front of everyone. From the flames, he steps out with his long hair flowing, and honestly, I think it'd look even cooler if it were white. He gives that little look, and before the bandits can react, he slashes through them all, slicing bodies clean in half. Photoshop edits everywhere. What the hell? The fight's over in one panel, bodies already burning on the ground. But Leica feels something's off. Then someone behind him yells not to move. He turns and sees one of the bandits with a knife at a child's throat, warning that if he takes a step forward, the kid dies. The man staring coldly, realizing one of his crew survived after all. They freeze for a moment, blood dripping down the child's cheek. The protagonist lowers his blade and says he understands. He pulls an absolute cinema, telling him he won't come closer, so just let the children go. The bandit refuses, saying no way, these kids are valuable merchandise. And besides, what the hell even is this boy? He adds that since these kids already lost their families to demons, it'd be better for them to be sold off than end up monster food. Even if it's to some filthy old creep, at least they'd survive. But before he can finish, something flashes past and his arm is cut clean off by fire. The protagonist, pulling that absolute cinema, was smart. He went straight for the arm holding the knife. He even throws in the Geo8 line, "I told you I wouldn't come closer." And damn, not just the arm. The whole head goes flying too. What the hell? Well, true enough, better than just cutting off the knife hand is killing the bastard outright. My God, I didn't even think of it like that. The protagonist is stunned. He thought for just a second about spreading that strange flame across the ground, and it actually worked. He never imagined it could be that powerful. He then asks the kid if he's alright, since the boy is trembling all over. And of course that's expected. He must be terrified. But then the child suddenly gathers courage and hugs his leg. Our boy gently pats him and says it really was scary. In the next moment, the kid gets spooked again as Arthur approaches, while Leica himself is burning through aura like crazy, 10,000 units a second. Then he finally detransforms, exhausted, and collapses to the ground right in the middle of the children. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Karen shows up furious, demanding to know what's going on. And surprise, it's the kids bringing in the protagonist. What else did he expect? They say he was the one who gave them directions. Kieran walks up, furious that this bastard would pull something like that. He hoists Leica onto his shoulder, calling him a disgrace for causing trouble for the very people he should have been saving. Strangely enough, the boy is drooling in his sleep, resting peacefully, while Kieran grumbles that it's a failure on his part. Now he wants to know what they should do with him. Up above, a group is watching and bam. Welcome Fran, another new ally who says his sleeping face is adorable. Kenneth mutters that her heart is too soft. To him, this boy gets an X. The musclehead Griff says it's a disgrace to be that exhausted from something as simple as a cleanup mission. Jack adds that he's disappointed, considering everything they'd heard about the kid. But from her seat on the throne, Arthur, the gorgeous one, says they're judging a boy who only just awakened. They're being far too harsh. In her eyes, they'll keep observing him, and that's what's been decided. But obviously, they expect him to show a lot more progress next time. The scene shifts to another part of the castle. Fruit on the table, a banquet laid out for our boy, who's still drooling, sparkling with delight. He can hardly believe all of this is really for him. He starts eating everything in sight, and someone even offers him a cup to drink from. There are even maids bustling around. He apologizes for being late to his duties, but she tells him not to worry. He can take as long as he wants and eat as much as he likes. Leica realizes that unlike the orphanage, here he can finally eat in peace without anyone interfering. Truly, joining the Knight's Order was worth it. But then someone calls out to him. A boy in the back asks if he's Leica. The protagonist turns awkwardly and says yes. The boy steps right up to his face, staring him down, leaving him confused. He turns away, saying he really does have the face of an idiot, and orders him to follow, saying they're about to find out whether he's a useful idiot or a useless one. Leica's baffled. Who is this guy showing up out of nowhere saying stuff like that? The man introduces himself as Kenneth. He's the second in command. The protagonist is a little shaken, but Kenneth just tells him to shut up and follow. Then he turns to the girl beside them, asking how long she's going to keep wearing that outfit. And suddenly, it all makes sense. Why there were so many maids around. It's actually Fran dressed as one. Apparently, the girl's a cosplayer. The scene then shifts again to a forest where Leica is walking with the two of them. He's nervous, but Fran tells him not to worry. They have plenty of work to do, but their ultimate goal is for everyone to return safely, without a scratch. He says he understands, while Mick still can't believe this is the same person from before. Was this girl really that important? Kenneth says they're almost there, and Fran explains that she'll tell the story again. It seems that outside the royal capital, some monsters were spotted today. To prevent any damage, the army decided to act quickly, so they were sent out even without much certainty. Obviously, they're mostly out here to see what Leica is capable of. Since he's joining the Order now, they need to test his power. The commander herself had been debating what to do with him, so he can take this whole thing as a kind of evaluation. Leica doesn't feel too excited about it, since it means he could still lose his place in the Knights. But that insecurity vanishes the moment the tall one comes over, pats him gently and says she has high expectations for him. She heard from the commander that he has great abilities. His expression changes right away and he smiles, saying she can count on him. This will be easy. He wants to know immediately who the enemies are, who the monsters are that he's going to wipe out. Kenneth shoots back that he's pretty confident for someone who had to be carried by children after saving them. He warns Leica to remember, if they decide he's useless, he will be expelled from the Knights. Judging by his dumb-looking face, that's the most likely outcome. Leica snaps at him to quit running his mouth, asking why he's always acting so tough. They're probably around the same age anyway, so why does he act superior? Honestly, Kenneth looks worn out, if he really is the same age as our protagonist. Fran steps in, smoothing things over, telling them to stop fighting. She apologizes to Leica and explains that Kenneth made a vow to always be brutally honest. That only annoys Leica more, because now he knows deep down Kenneth truly does think he's an idiot. Kenneth confirms it and then demands to know what's up with him not making a vow. Leica says it doesn't matter, but Kenneth insists it's strange, because their powers come from the vows they make. The bigger the sacrifice, the greater the power. Leica thinks to himself, really? That hardly feels like much of a sacrifice. Too easy. In Hunter x Hunter, that stuff was way more intense. The protagonist is about to say he already knows that when, bam, a gun suddenly appears at the back of his head. Kenneth tells him that within 6 months, usually 1/3 of recruits either die or are broken by the vows they make. But Leica is more focused on how the hell Kenneth managed to appear behind him without him noticing. Kenneth glares at him, demanding to know how he dared to join the Order without sacrificing anything. He's about to pull the trigger when Leica hesitates, and Fran suddenly grabs his arm, telling Kenneth that's more than enough. Right then, Leica's aura flares up, and he admits he really didn't make any vow. But the commander accepted him, and there's no way he's going back to that orphanage. Whatever it takes to join the Knights, he'll give it everything he's got. Kenneth is stunned. The boy grabs his pistol, and it vanishes. He can't understand how something just destroyed his divine weapon, and he starts summoning another. Fran interrupts, telling them both to knock it off. She likes the energy and determination, but from here on, it's her turn. And just like that, oh no, she says monsters are staring them down, and it's time to get to work. That's when I notice she's pulled out a massive fork, and the hulking creatures are glaring at them. The first one charges, and the 3 of them dodge. But then the creature lashes out with a venomous tail, splattering liquid on a tree that melts straight through it. It's some bizarre ape with a snake's tail. Leica wants to know why it melted like that. Kenneth just tells him not to touch the tail. Obviously, it's deadly. Then 5 more charge at Leica all at once. He dodges one strike, slips past another, muttering that these beasts are straight up cheating. Meanwhile, Fran just smiles, waves goodbye, and tells the two of them to handle it now. Leica's left confused, wondering if she really isn't going to help. But the girl is already walking off, casually killing a few as she goes, saying she knows there must be someone controlling all of this and she's going to track them down. She rushes ahead while the protagonist. Then suddenly, Leica sees Kenneth pull out 2 massive pistols again. For a second, it looks like he's aiming at Leica's head, but instead he shoots the monkey creeping up behind him. He warns that if Leica intends to join the Knight's Order while panicking like this, he might as well give up now. Another beast leaps at Leica from behind, but this time he draws his sword and slashes it down, saying no way he will join this order and prove his worth. Kenneth just says his words are empty. If he wants to prove something, he should do it through his actions. They split off, Kenneth locked on like an aimbot, mowing down monkeys left and right, while the protagonist charges in with his sword, leaps at the first and slices it down, taking out 4 in one motion, their bodies collapsing to the ground in pieces. But while he's cutting through them, he notices Kenneth is completely annihilating everything around him. Damn, the artist really went wild, drawing a mountain of dead monkeys piled up around the guy. And Leica realizes it's no wonder this bastard is the vice commander. Even though the sword is strong, it can't compare to that destructive firepower. 2 more beasts rush him, and he activates his sword again. But this time it releases a strange flame that bursts outward into the air. He remembers that the bigger the flame, the faster his energy drains, and at this rate he's going to collapse like he did back with the kids. Meanwhile, Kenneth is farming mobs like a broken spawn point, telling Leica that if he's going to keep killing so little, he might as well sit in the shade. The protagonist can't wrap his head around it. This guy doesn't stop shooting for even a second, and he's not even short of breath. The gap between them is enormous. So he asks honestly, how the hell does his ammo never run out? Kenneth explains that his guns are divine weapons and the bullets are formed from mana. For a moment, Leica finds it funny that he's just spilling everything, but then remembers what Fran said, he literally can't lie. At the same time, he notices Kenneth's divine art works differently from his own. While Kenneth uses mana to create each bullet, Leica's power flows continuously out of his body. The problem is, even knowing this, it's not like he can just manifest pistols out of nowhere. And if he keeps going like this, the result is obvious. He freezes and Kenneth asks if he's already going to give up. He keeps firing, saying the boy can't adapt, can't come up with a plan, and clearly doesn't belong in the Knights. He even says that as soon as they return, he'll report to the captain that Leica doesn't deserve to be here. But then Kenneth suddenly feels something strange. Looking back, he sees a massive sword forming in the sky. Leica says tricks were never his style anyway, so he'll forget about efficiency and mana cost. The hulking beasts shriek. Kenneth tries to dodge out of the way, and Leica declares that with just one strike, he'll end it all. The blade crashes down straight into the middle of the horde, and the impact sweeps across the entire forest. From high above, Kenneth looks down at the volcano-sized crater it created and mutters that it was insanely dangerous. He drops back down and finds Leica collapse, gasping, "I can't even lift a finger." But then he demands to know if that bastard saw it. Kenneth spent all that time firing, but Leica killed way more in a single blow. They'll have to admit his potential now. Kenneth, though, stays silent, staring in confusion. From each of the corpses, a strange line is flowing down into the ground. He suddenly shouts that they're standing in the middle of a trap and tells Leica to run. The ground starts shaking, and a giant mouth with a long tongue bursts up beneath them both. Leica glances to the side, terrified, and swings his sword's power across and shapes a rope so the two of them can hold on and not fall. Kenneth quickly explains that this monster uses the monkeys as bait to devour other creatures. The problem is that the protagonist burned through too much energy earlier and now can't fight anymore. Wait, wasn't Kenneth just now flying around like Dragon Ball Z? Looks like his powers run out too. The tongue lashes out, binding them both. Leica yells for the damn thing to let go when suddenly something appears in the sky. Fran, beautiful as ever, arrives in giant form, saying that since the beast opened such a massive mouth, she'll just have to handle it. Her spoon enlarges into something colossal, and she drives it right into the creature's mouth, hurling it upward. She digs deep under the beast, revealing what's probably the real owner of that massive maw. She rushes forward, unleashing a flurry of slashes, slicing the creature apart completely. The two crash to the ground awkwardly, and Fran approaches in that tiny skirt of hers, telling them they did well taking care of the monkeys. She says she sensed the presence of a powerful demon, but didn't expect it to appear in that form. At least she's happy the two of them have become close friends, though clearly neither Leica nor Kenneth would say they're that friendly yet. After freeing himself from the tongue, Leica is left stunned at what she just did. With a single simple move lifting the creature skyward, she resolved what had seemed impossible for him. She really was on a completely different level. What he doesn't understand is why her hands are clasped together afterward. Then it clicks. She's praying. Fran explains that they might not know this, but every demon was originally human. After his subjugation, she likes to pray. What happened to these poor ones was that they were exposed to dark magic. That's how they became monsters. Leica nods, saying he understands, while Kenneth points out something odd. He's never heard of a magical reservoir this large in the region, powerful enough to create a creature like that. And the fact it appeared so close to the capital makes even less sense. Fran agrees it did seem out of place. Suddenly, Fran senses something strange and shouts for everyone to run. They don't understand why until the ground starts trembling. Then a voice says he thought he had sent one of the most impressive creatures he had. Someone steps onto the trio's backs, and when they turn, a hooded figure approaches. Fran looks completely shaken. The man says he can't believe she managed to slice his child apart like that. Humans with their deceiving faces really are disgusting creatures. Fran is more alarmed by the fact that he referred to it as his child. She demands to know who he is, but the man just raises his thumb, points it downward, and instantly slams all three of them to the ground. Leica knows there's no way he can handle this. Fran, who's far stronger than him, doesn't stand a chance. Kenneth, though, is still defiant. He pulls out his massive pistol and shouts that the bastard isn't getting away with this. The man just smirks, calling him a naughty little child. Red flames suddenly ignite along his arm. The hooded man says it's fine. He'll simply reconstruct them all. No worries, they'll even be stronger than before, just like the one he's about to create now. The creature Fran had sliced apart begins to reassemble, pulled back toward him. Something horrifying takes shape before Leica's eyes, leaving him in disbelief. The reformed monster now has a brain with a gaping mouth in its stomach, a giant eye, and damn, it grabs Fran. No, don't do this. You've only got 2 women in this story. Don't bite her. The protagonist watches in shock. Come on, protagonist, do something. Awaken already. He does. Thank God. The demon recoils in surprise. Fran looks confused. Kenneth watches, and our boy rises with his long hair flaring, glaring with pure rage. Kenneth can't believe it. Our boy just pulled off the classic thumbnail energy ball move and hurled it straight at the monster. Boom blew open a crater in the thing. Fran is standing there in disbelief while he's all swaggered up. But that's all it was. He killed the creature, then immediately detransformed. The hooded figure, however, is now intrigued by the kid, saying he truly is incredible. Moving like that under such a crushing gravitational field should have been impossible. And on top of that, he's certain that flame from earlier isn't supposed to exist in this world. He pulls Leica closer, saying how interesting he is and asking for forgiveness. Suddenly, he opens the boy's pupil and sees something red glowing inside. At that moment, he mutters that he understands. The boy made a contract with a god from another world. But to think he offered something like that? Madness. While the man is lost in his monologue, the protagonist drives his strike right through his chest. He even mocks him, saying the bastard talks too damn much. The entire figure begins to disintegrate, leaving only its clothes on the ground. Leica then collapses face first, and the other 2 stumble back, asking themselves if he really killed it. Fran thinks it's basically impossible. She checks the clothes and finds what's left is some kind of puppet. Whoever it was, they've been controlling it remotely. The 2 try to wake Leica, but he's off in dreamland sleeping peacefully. Fran, though, is shaken by this bizarre puppet that could spawn creatures. What kind of power does someone need to crush all 3 of them so easily from afar? Then she suddenly gasps, asking if it could be the master of magic, the Commander Tempest. Cut to a village straight out of a mobile game. A little girl opens the door and calls for Tempest. And is that Rimuru? A man with a book over his face, saying the day is too beautiful, and he's just an old guy wanting to rest a bit. He's got long hair, kind of like a thinner, lankier version of Leica. He says he's found something wonderful, and his heart is pounding. The girl teases him, saying he's always been a scatterbrained dreamer. He flicks his finger, pours himself tea, saying he prefers being lazy anyway. Then, as he gazes at the cracking sky, he says from now on, exciting things are about to happen. Meanwhile, the group is carrying Leica back. Kenneth grumbles at him to wake up already, saying he doesn't want to haul him all the way to the capital. But the protagonist is lost in thought about that strange man, and about what he said. What exactly did I offer to gain that kind of power? Was it something like, you'll become a monster, killing everything? Back at the Knight's base, word spreads that the boy has a contract with a god from another world. The place is an underground barracks, and Grift insists that if that's true, then he stands against the very foundation of the Knight's Order. I'm still confused whether Vice Commander Jack is a man or a woman. This artist's style makes it hard to tell. They've got huge arms, but it also kind of looks like they got a chest. Either way, Jack points out that it seems the boy produced a gigantic divine weapon. That much is clear. Karen agrees, saying the kid has already proven himself valid in combat twice now. Plus, they can't just blindly trust what some creepy puppet said in front of everyone. The blonde-haired one, though, says it seems there's something involving the Master of Magic, and the risk is simply too great. This organization doesn't have room for uncertainty, because everything those people plant leads to chaos. That's Vice Commander Gavin staring hard at Arthur's wide hips. She answers that she wants to hear Fran's opinion, since she was there in the moment. Fran replies that when that creature appeared, she and Kenneth couldn't even stand. If Leica hadn't been there, it would have died for sure. But at the same time, Fran noted that maybe Leica himself couldn't properly control that power. Gavin added that he'd heard every time the boy used his abilities, he ended up completely drained and unconscious. How could they rely on someone like that or expect him to eventually master it? Honestly, I'd rather have someone reckless on my team than have everyone dead. Arthur thought it over and said she understood. It was hard for him to control that power because it came from another world. Whether he was suitable to become a knight or not, that was something they would have to determine with time. Everyone stared at her, and she declared that given everything, she wanted to know what would convince Gavin. He answered that the boy would have to pass the trial of the Guardian Flame. That was the bare minimum for allowing him into the team. Apparently, that wasn't a small thing. Everyone looked shocked. But Arthur turned immediately and said she made her decision. She ordered Jack to heal the boy since they'd be sending him straight into hell, so he better be in one piece. Meanwhile, Leica was struggling, still remembering what the hooded man had said about him having met a god from another world. It was insane to think he'd offered something like that. He muttered that the guy was disgusting, and then suddenly he woke up, shouting for him to shut up. But he was only in his room, with Kenneth at his side reading a book saying he had finally woken up. Even with recovery techniques used on him, it had taken forever. The protagonist wanted to know where that dangerous man was, but Kenneth told him to relax. The immediate danger had passed. Kenneth, a bit flustered, seemed like he was about to thank him, and Leica pressed him, asking what he wanted to say. Kenneth admitted he'd gone to check the vault because he wanted to say thanks. If not for Leica, they all would have died. He had been worried Leica wouldn't wake up. The protagonist was confused. He hadn't expected Kenneth to worry about him. But Kenneth replied that of course he had, since Leica was the one who saved them. Leica thought to himself that this bastard really couldn't lie, and Kenneth said it didn't matter. Fran walked in, and Leica rubbed his face awkwardly, realizing his recovery time was over. His future had already been decided. He would have to take the trial of the Guardian Flame. Kenneth looked alarmed, while the protagonist didn't understand. Kenneth explained it was madness. The boy had just arrived, a complete amateur, and they wanted to send him to a place like that. Karen then stepped forward, saying he was the administrator of that trial. Leica muttered in the background that it was fine. If he passed, he'd be recognized as a member. But Kenneth corrected him. This wasn't a test to become a member, but to become one of the executives. Normally, you couldn't even think of attempting it until after countless battles and recognitions. And yet they were sending him, who had just joined the team and was still learning to use magic, into the same trial as an executioner. Kieran told the boy to take it seriously. Usually 1/3 failed, another third went insane, and only a small number ever passed. Many who failed also died. So he better approach it with seriousness if he didn't want this to be the end of him. Really, these humans must be the smartest I've ever seen. The apocalypse is right at their doorstep, ready to wipe them out, and they invent a test that kills their own soldiers. That's a solid 10 out of 10 for everyone involved. Kenneth wanted to hear Leica's answer. The boy hesitated, saying he didn't understand what was so difficult about it. Besides, he had no choice. This was the only place he had now. So of course he accepted. 5 days later, in front of the trial's cave, Karen explained that the test would have 2 parts. The first was to survive inside the cave for 3 days. He asks what the second part is, and the man shows him a candle. He tells him to pour his mana into it, and as soon as Leica does, a flame sparks to life. Karen explains that he has to make sure the torch never goes out, protecting it for 3 days. Leica asks why, and Karen says because for 3 days, that flame will attract every monster nearby. In other words, all he has to do is not die. And with that, the dumbest test in human history begins. Once inside, Leica realizes it's hard to breathe. Maybe it's what Karen mentioned about the place being filled with magical essence. The northern region already has more mana than usual, and in the cave, the concentration is even greater. That's why the monsters here are absurdly strong compared to elsewhere. At least the mission itself seems simple. Survive and keep the flame alive. A snake-like creature lunges at him. He dodges, draws his sword, and cuts it down easily. But he notices right away that because he used his own mana, the candle flared up, burning way brighter. This was also a way for him to learn how to control the amount of energy he was releasing, since the flame would reveal it. He focuses, trying to calm the fire, and after some effort, it returns to normal. But that first fluctuation instantly draws a swarm of beasts, all drooling with hunger. Leica remembers what they said. Either he would become a member or he'd die here. Monsters rush him from every side, while the knights watch through a magic mirror. Kenneth comments that, just as he expected, it's impossible. The boy doesn't stand a chance. It's far too soon for him. But Karen replies that if the commander made this decision, it means she wouldn't accept anything less than something this extreme. Kenneth grumbles that he gets it, but right then another interrupts, saying he has the feeling the kid might actually pull it off. Leica is being attacked from all sides, wondering how he's supposed to survive 3 days of this when the creatures just keep getting stronger. At this rate, he'll be overwhelmed. Then the flame suddenly burns brighter than ever. He decides to push it even further, to attract absolutely everything in the cave and finish it all in one go. The boy doesn't do half measures, he goes straight from 0 to 100. He shouts for everything to stop, then unleashes an explosion from his body that blasts all the way to the cave's entrance, vaporizing every monster. The cavern glows like the inside of a volcano as he demands to know what those fools think of that. Kenneth thinks it's madness, but apparently the boy's plan was to wipe everything out and then rest afterward. Kieran, on the other hand, looks excited. He says that if Leica manages to pull it off, it would be incredible. But suddenly, he tells them to wait. Something's wrong. That thing shouldn't be there. He wonders if it's the work of that damned bastard. Leica sits down calmly, saying at least now he's cleared out a bunch and can finally rest. But then a strange laser beam shoots past him. Looking back, he sees a bizarre creature approach. 4 legs, 8 arms, bristling with swords. He's confused, wondering what kind of beast this is, while Karen recognizes it immediately. Berserette, a creature developed by the knights themselves. In truth, it was a monster designed to kill other monsters, and it absolutely wasn't supposed to be here. Karen immediately contacts the barracks, demanding to know if this was their doing. This test was only supposed to involve regular monsters. Gavin, the biggest idiot alive, admits he was just testing a prototype. He thought the situation was convenient, so he put it in the cave to see if it would kill a few creatures. By chance, it ended up being in the same trial. Karen snaps that there's no way he'll believe that nonsense, but Gavin coldly replies that he better not even think about saving the boy. This test is supposed to be difficult. If he can't handle it, then he deserves to fail. They said they don't need a kid like him. Really? This kid already saved 2 of their own teammates, so accepting him makes perfect sense. Honestly, it's looking more and more like that lunatic Gavin is the real enemy of humanity. At that moment, Maid Fran is in the room, the dream of any man. She cooks at home and conquers the world outside, truly unstoppable. Gavin, though, questions why she lowers herself, acting like a servant. She says it's just a hobby. I call it a fetish. She asks how much sugar he wants. He says none. She replies that he seems oddly cheerful today. He answers that he doesn't think so, but maybe he's in a better mood because in this organization, the fewer problems, the better. Honestly, he's probably happy because he thinks Leica is about to die. And Leica is in the cave dodging lasers left and right, throwing energy balls into the monster, making them explode. But the creature is completely unfazed. Leica wonders why his attacks, powerful enough to kill all the other monsters, aren't working this time. Even worse, the flame is still burning strong, which means more creatures might soon be drawn to him. He dodges 2 more strikes while the monster locks onto his position. Leica knows he can't keep pouring out that much energy. The fire is draining him, and soon others will appear. But what could he do? How was he supposed to take this thing down? The monster stares down at him again as he racks his brain, searching for its weakness. Suddenly, it halts its assault. But the second Leica moves even a toe, a shot nearly takes him out. That's when he realizes it's reading his movements ahead of time. He freezes mid-run, then switches tactics, charging straight at it to see how it handles something so direct. He weaves past 2 lasers, slides under its leg, and slices it in half. Easier than expected, but it's not over. The beast crashes against the wall, then lunges again. Leica snarls, declaring the bastard's finished, and drives his blade right into its face, stabbing through the eye and pulling out what was inside. He sees the creature is entirely made of wires and announces it's done now. Gavin glares in rage while Fran claps, praising how impressive he is. She tells Gavin to put sugar in his coffee. He dumps in a pile to calm himself and gulps it down. Then he tells her to leave. He wants to be alone. She says fine. The fool sits there trembling, muttering that this was just to make sure, because no one was ever meant to survive that cave easily. Why is he working so hard to kill the very boy who's supposed to be humanity's hope? Explain yourself, bastard. Day 3 of the trial. Night has fallen. The protagonist is exhausted, drained, and the candle is now tiny flickering. That means he's close to his limit. He sees monster flesh in front of him and wonders if it just moved. The slight twitch proves it wasn't his imagination. The remains of the beasts he killed, so many of them, are starting to rise. One twisted creature stands up before him and he can't understand why. Maybe it's because the mana in this place is so dense. Either way, this makes things even worse for him. At that moment, a golden glow fills the cavern. It looks like a bell ringing. He remembers what Karen told him. He had to survive, keep the flame burning, and leave the cave when the bell rang. All that's left now is to get out. But monsters block his path. He tries to push through to the side, clutching what little remains of the candle. He forces himself onward, refusing to stop, running while beasts close in from behind. Finally, he sees the exit, just as a whip cracks across his back. Even so, he keeps moving forward. And to be honest, it didn't even seem like it hurt that much. He kept pushing forward toward the exit, but of course the monsters were still chasing from behind. Then, bam, he trips and falls flat on his face like an idiot. But right at that moment, a blue strike flashes by and someone steps in front of him. It's Karen smiling, telling the boy that time's up. Leica asks if he passed, but before he can hear the answer, he faints. Karen says yes, the boy endured well. Later, he wakes up sitting in a chair, so groggy and confused. He asks where he is, and Arthur tells him this is the ceremonial hall. He wants to know why, and why everyone is standing around him. Arthur explains they're about to begin the ritual of passing the guardian flame. The Knights of the Sacred Order will reveal their vows, bare their arms, and show loyalty to the new recruit. Karen steps forward first. He declares that as captain of the 9th Division, his vow is to never take family into battle. Wait, does that mean he won't kill families or he won't fight alongside them? That part's unclear. Fran, gorgeous as ever, captain of the 2nd Division, declares her vow is to give up food for the rest of her life. What? Then what does she eat to stay that healthy? Look at that torso, those legs, built like a damn cat. Kenneth, vice captain of the 2nd Division, says his vow is to never tell a lie. Griff reveals his vow is to dedicate his right arm to God. Jack. Oh, Jack's insane. His vow is to stay a virgin for the rest of his life. That has to make him the strongest one here. Basically a living god. And Gavin, good lord, his vow is to never sleep. Unbelievable. On top of that, his shield's vow is to never forgive anyone who betrays the order. 2 vows, greedy bastard. And how do you even live without sleep, without food? These people are confusing as hell. Then Arthur raises her sword high and declares her vow to renounce gender. Oh no. Wait, what? What kind of vow is that? Renounce gender in what sense? Stop being a man? Stop being a woman? Neither one. Which is it? Then she calls for the recruit Leica to bare his arms and make a vow. This was the trust he had to prove to them all. And damn, he suddenly remembers. He doesn't even know what his vow is. But then his aura ignites, his hair surges upward, and the whole hall shakes. Everyone gasps, trembling. When the aura fades, he says his name is Leica, and his vow. He doesn't know. He has no idea what this power is or how he received it. He only remembers the monster saying it was terrifying that he gave up something like that. But he swears that he'll gain everyone's trust and become the strongest knight. He won't let anyone else be hurt. And before that can happen, he'll save this world. Now that I think about it, Arthur wide hips looks like a woman, but since she renounced gender, why does she draw him with such wide hips? Anyway, she tells Leica that for the flame of life, you will need to find strength. And as proof of trust that he has what it takes to become a knight, they accept him. They welcome him into the sacred order of knights. Everyone places a hand over their chest. Leica looks up the sky just to make sure it's really blue. I'm still baffled by their vows. So many don't make sense. Arthur is on her way out when Gavin stops her, saying he can't believe they accepted someone who couldn't even state his vow. She turns and reminds him, was it he who said the trial would prove whether Leica was capable of joining or not? On top of that, not knowing his vow and openly admitting it was already a risk to his own life. That alone was proof enough. Gavin argues that the irregularity itself is the problem. What if the boy became a threat to the knight's very existence? She replies that he worries too much. That flame of his, growing stronger the closer he gets to death, will no doubt become a force the knights desperately need. While Gavin is still brooding, our boy is already clinging to Fran. The next chapter starts on a train. Family smiling, the ride set to last 2 hours. Inside, there's a section reserved for knights, and our boy even gets a little cape. He's overjoyed, proud, telling himself no more pathetic days, no more bullying. His life is finally going to be easy. Poor kid doesn't realize what he signed up for. He seems to have forgotten the world is on the verge of ending. Down the aisle, a woman offers food. He takes some but says he doesn't have money. She reassures him it's fine. This is what's given for free to knights. He's glowing, saying life's too good now. He never imagined eating good food for free. But Jack the Virgin cuts in, telling him not to think it's really free. They're paying with something other than money. He thumps his chest and says they're paying with their lives. Leica stares, wondering, is my life really worth an apple and a sandwich? Jack continues, saying everyone relies on them for protection. And now that Leica's joined the order, he can't hesitate. He has to give it everything he's got. Kenneth shifts the topic, asking why they're being sent west. Jack says he heard monster activity in the region has been increasing non-stop and reinforcements are needed. Leica notices the train is full of knights, meaning they're sending a lot of people. But he's curious if everyone else here are just recruits. Why is Kenneth on board? Kenneth explains it's not about him being a recruit. Fren ordered him to follow Leica and keep an eye on the messes he causes. Leica freezes, confused, then turns to Jack and asks about something that's been bothering him. He swore a vow to stay a virgin for life. Did that really do anything? Jack looks a little puzzled, but Leica insists he hasn't stopped thinking about it. It's strange. Jack explains that's not how vows work. If someone gave up something trivial, God wouldn't grant the same power. A vow of virginity is different. It's tied to those who desire you. Basically, if you think you're a heartthrob and there'd be a billion women after you, then renouncing all of that is huge. Leica mutters that makes him sound like a pervert. Jack adds that what matters is how precious the offering is to you. He points out Fran as an example. She gave up food. For her, it wasn't just about survival. It clearly had deeper meaning. That's why her power is so strong. Now Leica's thinking about Arthur. Giving up gender. How exactly did that work? Everyone falls silent for a moment. Then Jack reveals that Arthur is actually a princess. Knew it. Those wide hips weren't fooling anyone. Kenneth explains that Arthur was chosen from the royal family. The previous captain was her half-brother, and when he died, she inherited the position. She had been a pampered, delicate princess her whole life, so renouncing gender, something tied to her identity, her looks, and her role was deeply significant. Leica realizes that explains how she gained such incredible power. Still, he feels like some vows should be harsher. He's expecting people to be cutting off ears, losing their hearing, plucking out eyes, losing their tongues, serious sacrifices. So far, everyone's given up something small. Well, except Jack. His vow really is brutal, pure suffering. The three of them laugh and bicker a bit. Even Jack joins in when suddenly the door slides open and a man in a hat steps inside. Turns out he's the conductor, thanking all the knights of the order for being there today to protect the train. He introduces himself as Duga, and right then the woman nearby looks confused, glancing back, wondering who he is. In that instant, the shady guy under the hat swings his arm, and in a flash, two people are grabbed by the chest. Jack leaps, dodging an attack that erupts from the floor, ripping through the seats. But by then, several knights were already dead. Honestly, total cannon fodder. Useless. Leica panics, asking what just happened, and sees bodies skewered on spikes everywhere. Another knight starts transforming right there. Those who don't die immediately twist into strange, blue-skinned creatures. Kenneth shouts at Leica to get back, but oh hell. His Dan arms popped off again like a Lego figure falling apart. He screams in frustration while Jack, shaken, asks if everyone is turning into demons. Duga bows and says Jack is exactly right. He introduces himself as a servant of Lord Tempest and the Grand Magus. And of course, anyone who stands against their path must personally be sent to death. Kenneth realizes instantly it's the same power as that creature before, the one that turned corpses and monsters into abominations. That confirmed it. This guy was tied to the Magus. And the problem now? Lake is a mess, missing a chunk of his arm. One of the transformed monsters leaps at him from behind, but Kenneth draws his pistol and blows its head apart midair. He shouts for Jack, who rushes over and activates his healing. Suddenly, a glowing fairy's cry manifests. The Eternal Virgin really does wield fairy magic. He kneels, picks up the severed arm, and says there's nothing he can't heal. He presses it back, unleashing golden light, and just like that, Leica's restored, the pain gone. Leica is stunned. He has full control again, as if he'd never been injured. But then something draws their attention. Doga, headless, is clapping. He says that for mere humans, their skills are magnificent. But what a pity. Even after being refined for so long, they'll still die like every other knight of the Order. His head reforms, and he declares a tragedy. But this is their end. Monsters are swarming everywhere. The squad locks eyes. Jack throws himself into close combat. Kenneth opens fire while Leica just dodges desperately. The trouble is, Jack notices how fast Duga is far too quick, and everyone who had transformed seems stronger than before. From the back, Duga apologizes mockingly, warning that if they don't deal with these creatures, all the civilians and the rest of the train will die. And of course, Leica's about to make the dumbest move possible. He slams his hand on Duga's, shouting that he's a knight and needs to wake up to reality. But while he's yelling, his blade pierces through the demon's head. Jack snaps at him. Once a human has become a creature, there's no going back. The Order of Knights exists to protect the living, and that's why he has to be ready to sacrifice comrades. If he can't do that, then he doesn't belong here. Leica is shaken by the obvious truth, while Kenneth tells him to relax, that he'll handle things here while the others protect the civilians. Off to the side, a girl is crying. Leica notices her, pulls her close, and dashes toward the door. In the next car, he bursts in, warning everyone there are demons in the back and they need to run. The passengers start evacuating in a panic, but one mother, basically a child factory, has 3 kids already, one strapped to her back and looks like another in her belly. Right then, the door explodes. She freezes in terror as one of the creatures bursts through. The family just stands there, waiting for someone to save them. Lucky for them, the protagonist is there. Unlucky for them, the protagonist is also a weakling. Or maybe not this time. He launches a kick, draws that oversized sword again, and declares he won't let anyone get hurt. With one slash, he practically splits the train car, leaving the monsters behind as he leaps forward to rejoin the others. Dova chuckles, saying the boy isn't half bad. The detached train keeps rolling safely, while Leica announces the civilians no longer need to worry. But Duva notes something strange. From what he'd investigated, no one with the power of an officer should be here, other than the commanders. Leica snaps at him to shut up, saying he'll kill him. Dova even looks a little surprised, asking to at least finish his speech. He apologizes, saying he hoped this journey would be amazing and tried to prepare something special. But it seems his plan fell short. This guy looks like a straight-up Dragon Ball Z villain, while our boy with his wild hair looks like he belongs in the same show. Leica calls him a bastard again, but Jack tells him to calm down and take a closer look. They need to figure out what this guy is planning to do with all the corpses, because charging recklessly could get them all killed. Everyone wants Duga dead, but they have to be smart about it. Doga smirks, saying he's actually shaken. If he hadn't kept his cool earlier, he would have died. Unfortunately, he'll now have to reshape their fallen comrades into something interesting. Jack bursts forward, dodging one tentacle, slicing another, sidestepping 2 more, while Kenneth fires off rounds from a distance. Leica, meanwhile, is stuck as usual, arm and leg bound. Yet, as always, once his power flares, it's resolved. Doga warns them that a frontal assault won't work, but Jack, now face-to-face, tells him they'll see about that. He slashes, but Duga morphs into a blob of slime and slips out the door, fleeing. Jack sprints after him, but when he reaches the next cabin, it's empty. He wonders if Duga really escaped, but he's certain. There's no way it was that easy. He must be hiding nearby. At the entrance to one of the cabins, a trail of blood leads onward. Jack follows it and finds the real conductor unconscious. He grabs him, asking if he's alright, but the man doesn't respond. Jack tries to use his fairy healing, but suddenly, bam, the man stabs his arm, shifting from an expression of pain to a twisted grin, laughing like a lunatic. Jack smacks him hard, snapping his neck. But the contorted body keeps laughing, saying how easy it is to trick knights. Jack reels in pain as the figure twists further, sprouting grotesque heads. mocking how knights always insist on trying to save everyone. Back with Duga, he says he learned that trick from his big brother. Then from the floor, another Duga emerges, this one carrying a demon on his shoulder. Jack curses them as bastards and swears to kill them, but he's struck again, once in the head, once in the chest. The creature sneers, saying this one's a fool and should be tossed out the window. The scrawny little brother, Dolce, explains that they dumped the conductor's body long ago. He was just disguising himself. Kenneth rushes in, calling Jack's name. He sees him torn apart and then glares at the two monsters. They taunt him, saying it's Jack's fault for being so stupid. They laugh at how funny it is that an official knight would die so easily. But their grins vanish when a purple light cuts across their arms. Like butter, their flesh splits, and they start writhing in agony. The protagonist steps forward, aura blazing, declaring that this time the rookie is going to finish it. In the background, Kenneth is trying to help Jack stand, but the wound is far too deep. He calls out to Neve, and wow, Jack's power even activates unconsciously. That's pretty useful. But she explains that when Jack isn't awake, her healing takes much longer. Meanwhile, Dolce starts reconstructing his arm, and Doga remarks that some humans are ridiculously arrogant. Facing off against two executive knights would indeed be interesting. The two sides lock eyes, the ceiling cracks, and Dolce suggests they take this fight outside. Only then could both sides unleash their full strength. Leica says he has to deal with this guy, otherwise the remaining hostages might be at risk. Kenneth answers that it's fine. He'll keep watch over Jack. At that moment, Leica demands to know what they're after. Doga replies that his purpose is simply to send these remarkable knights on their journey to death. After all, they're forbidden from heading west. Leica presses him, asking what's in that place. Doga coldly answers that he doesn't need to know, because he'll die here anyway. The train enters a tunnel, plunging everything into darkness. Leica senses movement, strange bats swooping toward him. At first they don't seem strong and he cuts them down. But their numbers are far greater than expected, and he gets the creeping feeling someone is controlling them. One swoops at his back until a bullet smashes it midair. Kenneth. Leica thought he'd be stuck like an idiot watching over Jack's body, but here he is. Leica starts to say something, but Kenneth cuts him off. There's no way Leica could win this alone. If they don't fight together, they'll all end up dead. Doga reappears, declaring this is where their journey ends. He slams his palm to the ground, summoning a wave of monsters that surge toward Leica. But Leica stands calm, a sly grin on his face, and says it won't be that easy. Then, out of nowhere, he grabs Kenneth by the face and hurls him directly into the attack. The two brothers are stunned as Kenneth cleaves through, ripping the monsters apart. They demand to know how Leica could have known. Leica answers that knights must place absolute trust in their comrades. He knew Kenneth wasn't lying when he said he'd protect Jack. And since Kenneth also said he was counting on him, it was clear he doesn't lie. That certainty was all Leica needed. Now he snarls that they're screwed because his comrade doesn't lie. He charges at Duga, grabs his face, and slams him into the wall, asking how it feels to be killed by a rookie knight. Doga calls out for Tempest's name, but by then his body is already pinned to the wall as the train rushes forward. His form breaks apart, collapsing into a puddle of sludge. Leica declares that maybe he couldn't protect Jack, but he made sure that bastard wouldn't leave alive. The body disintegrates and Leica's transformation fades. But then, damn it, up ahead he spots another freak standing on the tracks, wielding a massive axe. He calls to Kenneth, saying there's someone on the rails. Looking closer, they realize it's a woman actually built like a tank, wielding something closer to a giant hammer. She's none other than Bridget, commander of the 6th Division, for those who like the muscular mommy archetype. She slams down hard on the tracks, conjuring a barrier of ice that halts the train completely. Her division pours in behind her, and she storms into the cabin. She doesn't waste a second, grabs Jax, smacks him across the face, and demands he start talking. Jack slowly comes to, sensing a familiar presence, only to be met with her fierce stare demanding explanations. The guy calls her either Big Sis or Your Highness, and honestly, I'm a little confused because both translations popped up. The two of them stare each other down with that big sister vibe hanging in the air. Just outside, people watch her talking with Jack, still in disbelief. Wait, are they actually calling this muscle-bound person he? No way, this author's playing with fire. She or he, I don't even know anymore, faces the two of them and says it looks like they were the ones who dealt with those creatures. On top of that, it seems Doga really was a demon serving Tempest. The two nod, confirming, and Bridget orders everyone to head back to headquarters and report the annihilation. Reinforcements were desperately needed. She also commands them to track down the other half of the train that carried the civilians, wherever it ended up. Then Bridget turns, telling them to come with her. She has an idea where the source of all this might be, and it's time to deal with it. Leica asks if this has anything to do with the marionette he encountered before, and if that guy is really so infamous that she recognized him. Kenneth admits he's no expert, but explains that the story lines up with an old legend of a mage from long ago, the one said to have opened the first great tear in the sky, summoning the Demon King. He's the demonic sorcerer known as Commander Tempest. Now they're skimming over the sand in a magically powered boat, Bridget explaining that judging by the information and the stories, it's very likely the demon they're facing is Tempest, and you should be inside the demonic celestial palace. Leica asks if this isn't just some fairy tale. Kenneth quickly corrects him, no, These beings are real. Bridget elaborates. When the Divine Knights managed to stop the Demon King, parts of his body were severed. Each piece became a new monster, all of them with immense intelligence. Naturally, those monsters caused disasters beyond measure. One could control time, summoning countless lightning strikes at once. Another possessed flames so fierce they could melt entire cities. Another unleashed floods without restraint, and the Earth One could split continents apart with a single wing beat. The Divine Knights of that era didn't stand a chance against them. That's why temples were built at the poles to seal them in. The problem is, in the towers where these celestial demons are bound, the spread of miasma is overwhelming. A good example is the land they're standing on now. It used to be lush, fertile soil, but with the water demon sealed in that tower, all nutrients were drained away, turning it into a desert. And word is, someone made contact with a man who creates demons. Even the higher-ups in the barracks were worried that one of the ancient elders had been resurrected, or that someone was working under Tempest's orders. And if one of the creatures spoke his name aloud, then it's best to assume they weren't lying, especially since Tempest is the very one who brought the first great disaster upon this world. The worst-case scenario for humanity would be him triggering the same catastrophe all over again. Hearing all this, Leica wonders if they're really about to face someone that powerful. Bridget answers bluntly, they'll soon reach the underground temple hidden in this region. Suddenly, the sandfish pulling their boat falter, and they plunge into absolute darkness. A red moon looms overhead. Great Griffith flashback vibes. Get out of here. Leica feels like he's seen this before. I've seen it too. For him, it's strangely nostalgic. In his mind, a cryptic voice murmurs, hard to understand. Then something surges up from beneath their boat, hurling them all straight toward the temple. Leica ends up stuck against the ceiling like an idiot. Fireworks explode in the dark, and a voice greets him warmly, saying how happy they are to meet again, reminding him that the last time they crossed paths was through a marionette. Leica doesn't understand, trying to figure out what this guy is talking about, when suddenly he remembers that face, the one who once spoke to him. Without a doubt, this had to be the demonic sorcerer Tempest. Before he can act, Bridget swings her massive hammer at him, but Tempest slips aside effortlessly, unfazed. He remarks that the Divine Knights haven't changed a bit since ancient times, to the barbaric and simple. Bridget demands to know if he really is Tempest and warns him that he shouldn't even be in this region. He'd better leave now. But Tempest refuses. He says he's conducted countless experiments, and now the moment has come to turn his dream into reality. Behind the castle, the moon trembles, and suddenly, rain begins to fall across the desert. Everyone is shocked, calling it impossible, but Tempest grins, saying it means exactly what they think. He has already resurrected the celestial water demon, Lord Vibble. Everyone freezes in dread as the droplets fall. I was expecting some godlike figure, and instead, out comes a tiny loli with a teddy bear in her hand. You know she's overpowered when the design looks that cursed. She yawns, saying she was dying of sleep, while Leica asks himself if that is really a celestial demon. Tempest steps forward and welcomes her back, apologizing for waking her. He knows it's been hundreds of years, but all he wants is for her to wipe out the descendants of the Divine Knights who once sealed her, when suddenly, she smashes her teddy bear straight into his face. Everyone stands there, confused. Vibble snaps at him, telling him to stop trying to give her orders. She was perfectly comfortable in her sleep, so why the hell did he wake her up? Tempest looks rattled, while a voice from above mutters that this isn't how it was supposed to go. Bridget, meanwhile, warns everyone not to drop their guard. She can feel the absurd level of demonic miasma radiating off this creature. If she's truly free, humanity's done for. But then Vebble notices something. She shoots straight toward Leica. Suddenly she's right in his face, calling him accurate and saying it's been a long time since they last met. Leica is completely lost, and she asks why he's here in her territory. She thought he'd be up north. Leica stammers that he has no idea what she's talking about. She scolds him, telling her big brother to stop being so distant. Apparently, this resurrection technique, taking over human bodies, works perfectly. Leica grows more and more terrified. It feels like all the secrets are unraveling. From above, Tempest declares that now it all makes sense. That's why he felt such a strong connection to another world through this boy. Clearly, there's more inside him than just a simple contract. Leica is still reeling when suddenly an attack smashes into a nearby pillar, forcing him to dodge. Vibble says it's a funny coincidence to find her brother here right after being forcibly awakened. Since they're together, why not play a little for old time's sake? She dives at him midair as he falls, but he crashes into Bridget's arms. In the same instant, Vibble lashes out with an attack. Bridget doesn't even feel it before part of her body melts away. Leica panics, asking if she's okay, and Jack instantly activates his healing. A fairy bursts forth, reconstructing her arm, and Bridget grabs her hammer, slamming it down on Vebble. Of course, it's not that simple. The hammer crumbles on impact. Vebble sneers, saying she didn't call them to play, she only called the boy. Poor Kenneth whips out his bargain bin pistols, but his bullets do nothing. Vebble grows impatient, saying they're already starting to annoy her. Then the water mana around her swells outward, forming giant bubbles that birth grotesque, big-headed monsters that float like moons. From afar, Tempest watches, delighted, praising the magnificence of the celestial demon's power, so overwhelming it makes the Divine Knights look like nothing. Someone munches on a pastry and says the master seems to be in a pretty good mood. Tempest answers that seeing a celestial demon moving freely has always been one of his dreams, and now that it's happening right before his eyes, he can't contain his excitement. What shocks him even more is that the very first celestial demon was awakened inside a human. He mutters that maybe it's time they retreat back to the northern temple before things spiral out of control. But suddenly, something flashes in the sky. A massive sword drops from above. It's her, the fierce, wide-hipped commander herself. Arthur has arrived. Tempest instantly recognizes that trouble has landed. Arthur, hand on her broad hips and full of swagger, tells him that since he and his lot decided to stir up chaos for her subordinates, they'd better be prepared for what she's about to do. Tempest glares back at her with that unnerving look. Down below, Arthur spots Bridget struggling against Vebel. In the same instant, Karen appears at her back and she asks him if he can hold out for 3 minutes. He asks against who, and she replies plainly, against the celestial demon. After that, she'll handle it herself. Tempest watches with interest until Arthur calls out to him directly. She apologizes, but since he's clearly the demonic summoner everyone's been talking about, she gives him one chance. Promise now to cause no more trouble, and she'll forgive him. Of course, he laughs, winks, and says he can't make that promise. The bastard floats off, glowing with Dragon Ball-style aura. Arthur isn't about to let him slip away. She triggers a starburst of power, shooting after him as their clash ignites. Meanwhile, Karen lands behind Leica and asks if he understands what's happening. Their task is simple. Hold off the celestial demon for 3 minutes until the commander returns. Leica looks shaken, but Kieran tells him to snap out of it. The creatures are coming. The first wave rushes forward. Kieran swings his blade smoothly, while Leica already takes a slash to the back. Jack casts his fairy magic, summoning a barrier that gives continuous healing. A perfect RPG moment, the healer dropping AO region. Leica dodges the floating moon-headed monsters while Bridget smashes them apart, but the problem is that the water not only damages, it also regenerates them almost instantly. From panel to panel, Leica transforms, unleashing his flame powers to encircle the beasts, but even then, it pushes through his fire. Finally, Kenneth's Walmart pistols actually start making a dent. Leica thanks him, but Kenneth scolds him. Stop burning through your power like that. At this pace, he'll collapse. Besides, fire against water demons is pointless. He's wasting energy. Leica realizes the obvious just as Karen charges his thunder spear. He slams it into the ground, commanding it to show its full strength. Lightning erupts upward. At the same time, Bridget brings down her hammer of winter's death, slamming the earth and unleashing a wave of ice without hesitation. Together, Lightning and Frost hammer into Vebel, who floats lazily inside a mass of water, yawning and saying these larvae are really starting to irritate her. She raises her hand and declares she's had enough. Suddenly, all her mana converges toward her body. Her form glows a cold blue inside the water as Karen realizes she's absorbing every shred of aura and amplifying her strength. Now the true battle is about to begin. Leica, transformed, can only think back to what she said, calling him her brother. He can't understand it. He's human. He's a divine knight. How could he be related to this monstrous thing grinning at him? He yells at her to stop looking at him like they know each other. Then, everyone feels something strange. Leica clutches his head, writhing as if something incomprehensible is tearing at his mind. It feels like there's a voice inside Leica's head, and he's demanding to know what it's doing there. And then, like Sukuna himself, it calls out, telling him that if the boy really is who he thinks, taking down Vebel should be easy. Karen yells for everyone to brace themselves. From the top of the lunar castle, Vebel descends straight toward poor Kenneth, the weakest of the bunch. He fires a few shots, but through the water's reflection, she locks onto him, appears out of nowhere, and slaps him across the face. Honestly, that was merciful, a slap instead of exploding his skull. Bridget rushes in for her signature hammer strike, lands it clean, and nothing. No effect at all. Shocked, she barely has time to react before Vebel casually stretches out a hand and shoves her back like it's nothing. Jack calls out to the princess, who assures him she's fine and tells him to focus on healing. Poor guy, he doesn't get to say anything else. He nods, obeying, while Leica shakes violently, still trying to understand what's happening and why it feels like his head is about to split open. A power is rising inside him, something he can't control. Right then, Vebel notices and moves in for a finishing blow. Leica locks eyes with her as she grins, then she slams her hand into his chest, tearing open a crater in his torso. He's sent flying. Jack desperately triggers his healing, but it's clearly not enough, until the fairy's magic suddenly reconstructs his chest cavity in an instant. That spell of his is ridiculously broken, but Vebel just looks down at him with disdain, remarking that he's gotten weak lately. That's when a voice in Leica's head tells him the time has come. He needs to stop resisting and hand everything over. Leica panics, asking who this he even is and what's going on. The voice insists it isn't a celestial demon. Meanwhile, Tempest is still fleeing, Arthur hot on his trail. He mutters that she's far too persistent, suggesting she just give up already. Arthur retorts that he's causing far too much trouble, so it's only fair she return the favor. Suddenly, she draws her blade, and with one slash, his legs are gone. Tempest cries out that she's cruel, cutting him down so mercilessly without even flinching. Arthur replies coldly that it's obvious. She knows that if he escapes, he'll keep resurrecting celestial demons. Tempest realizes she fully intends to kill him no matter what. He taunts her, asking if she isn't worried about her comrades she left behind. The longer she wastes here, the higher the chance she'll return to find them all dead. They'll keep fleeing while she agonizes over the choice. Arthur, however, vows that she'll kill him and still return in time to save her allies. With that, she unleashes a sealing strike, like the swords of revealing light in Yu Jio, cutting through him. His head falls, his body shredded to pieces. But even then, he smiles, saying it's sad to be in fragments, but he'll regenerate eventually. He congratulates her on winning the battle, but wishes her luck in saving her companions. Arthur glares, then immediately turns back, racing toward her squad. She knows now there's no time left. She has to help them. From the moment she told Karen she needed 3 minutes to chase Tempest until now on her return, only 2 minutes and 50 seconds have passed. But when she arrives, every single one of her comrades is lying dead on the ground and a celestial demon stands there grinning, practically begging for a like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.